we light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, with words written by Gloria Jean Watkins, better known as Bell Hooks, an American author, professor, feminist, and social activist. Recently, the College Board removed several authors from the Advanced Placement African American Studies course. Bell Hooks was one of the Black intellectuals who was removed. Throughout her life, she wrote about feminism, class, race, and love. Here are her words. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. And now, let's say together the words of our mission, which affirm our shared purpose. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world.
Good Sunday morning, everyone. I am the Reverend Jen Youngsun. I use the pronouns she and her. You know, some people tease us for using pronouns, but that won't stop us. We do it in solidarity with transgender and gender non-binary people. It is a simple act of love that honors all expressions of the human family. I was going to say hello to Daniel, our guest pianist, but Joe is here instead. And Joe, I didn't know that you could play so well. Joe is an amazingly talented, like multi-talented person, and so I'm so thankful for you. And Len, actually, you and I met at the Interfaith group. This Interfaith group is wonderful, and they are holding their circle worship services here at our church as we continue to build a closer relationship with them. So every other month, they are doing an interfaith worship service here, and you may be able to hear Len again.
And we would so love to see you.
Yes. So the Interfaith Hub is the name of that. You know, sometimes a preacher has one message in mind as Sunday approaches, and then something happens that causes her to have to pivot. Today is such a day. For the past few weeks, someone or some group filled with ignorance and hate has been dropping anti-Semitic flyers in neighborhoods around Eugene and Springfield. It is stirring up anxiety and fear. It is also calling us to put our faith in action to make love visible. And so we are pivoting today to address this issue and to encourage everyone that is able to join us this afternoon for a love and unity action. More about that later. For now, let us gather our hearts in love. May the worship we create together today exalt all that is holy and good. Come, let us worship together.
So a lot of the times, I invite you guys up for a story, for a book, maybe for a play. But today we're just going to have a conversation. We're going to have a talk. Conversation, yeah. Talking can be good. Well, you do talk a lot, but we love you. Because we want to hear what you have to say too. All right? So I'm going to start by asking you guys, some of you were here, if you remember way back in November when some of us went out in the cold and planted some daffodil bulbs outside.
Oh, no.
Simon, do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah?
I did a lot of that.
Yeah? How was that?
It was fun.
It was fun? Okay. Yeah. There are a lot of daffodil bulbs, and the people from Buildings and Grounds BAG helped us out. They did a lot of the work, really. But, oh, see, there's a beautiful daffodil. So the bulbs that we've planted are not making flowers yet, but they're on their way. Yeah, they're going to be beautiful flowers, just like that. Yeah, Elliot.
Mom saw flowers.
You did?
Pink kind.
Oh, you've already seen the pink kind of flowers coming up? Yeah. Well, as we watch our church, we're going to see some of those beautiful yellow daffodils come up. So who remembers why we did that? Because flowers, just by themselves, are pretty wonderful. But there was a specific reason why we went outside and planted all these daffodil bulbs. Do you remember, Cecilia?
In remembrance of the Holocaust.
Okay.
In remembrance of the Holocaust.
Okay. Holocaust, big word. Yeah.
I actually know what the Holocaust is.
Yeah. Some serious stuff, right?
Yeah. 6 million Jews get killed.
Can you say that again, Brady?
6 million Jews get killed in World War II. Also, I really hate those guys. We watched a movie about kids who lived in World War II. It's called Narnia. And they were retreating from London to the country so that because London was getting bombed.
Yeah. Exactly. So we did that as something to remember the millions of people who were killed just for being who they were, right? So we did that. We also did that specifically on Trans Day of Remembrance, right? Because sometimes people are mean against trans folks just for being who they are too. And it's important to remember to stand up for folks. Yes, Victoria.
I'm transgender, and some of the kids at my school, sometimes, like, one of my ex-friends, Abigail, she, last year, I wasn't transgender, and I was, different, but this year, she's not my friend anymore, and she's like, you're not like you were last year, and I was like, what does that mean? And then I figured it out, and I think she might be transphobic.
That's hard. Yeah. So here at this church, we know it's important to accept people for who they are, right? That we want to invite people into our community, no matter what sex or race or ability or gender or group that they belong to, right? All are welcome. And so you might have heard Rev Jen today say that there are some folks spreading flyers around town, anti-Semitic flyers. That means they don't like people who are Jewish just because of who they are. Yeah, spreading rumors saying that Jewish people are bad just because they're Jewish, which is a wild idea, right? So, and ideas like that, hate like that, can be scary and it can be hurtful. But here at our church, we have something that's more powerful than hate. Okay? Yeah? What do you think we've got here, Elliot?
Love.
Some people think that love is mushy or weak, but we know how important it is. And we know that it can be strong, right? Yeah. What are some of the things that love can help us do? If love is our superpower, what can it help us do?
This is about love. Like my sister was getting beaten up when she wasn't exactly playing a game, but but my friends said they were, and then I just got overraged. Yeah, kind of. We kind of got into a bit of a fight, but yeah, it was ridiculous.
So you felt love for your sister and wanted to stand up for her? Yeah, okay. Yeah, because love can help people remember the past and help us say no to hate. Love drives people to stand up to bullies, right? Love can help us protect our friends. Love is what inspired Hans Duch and Reverend Charles Joy to create our chalice symbol and help protect Jews during World War II. Love is what powers people to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Love is what inspires people to light candles and read names on Trans Day of Remembrance. Love is what reminds us to give food to people who are hungry and to help us plant trees in the parks. Love is the center of everything that we do here at our church, and it's a powerful force. So thank you for helping to remember the superpower of love.
Last night was our generous, fun potluck, and you all went all out with your costumes and creativity and delicious food. It was a really fun night. And we collected another 26 pledges, totaling $48,000 last night. So thank you to the Generosity Network team and everybody who helped. We had wonderful chair stackers and sweepers and people who put away tables and set up the chairs for this morning. So thank you for all of those hands that helped. Today is the last day of the month, and so that means it's the last day of our pledge campaign, the formal part of our pledge campaign. Unfortunately, we have heard from less than or fewer than half of our households that pledged last year. And so we're still waiting for your pledge forms. You know, there's no one else that financially supports the mission of this church. There's no like central office that gives us money every year. Each congregation is fully self-sufficient. And I know that when we pool all of our money together, that we will have enough to ensure that we can show up for every person who needs this kind of spiritual community. Every single contribution makes a difference, whether it's $1 a month or $1,000. Pledging is our way to say, this community is important to me. I want it to thrive, and I want to be a part of making that happen. And even if you're not able to make a financial contribution this year, we still ask you to fill out the pledge form. It's just a way for us to check in with you and hear from you, hear from all of our 375 members. And I know that giving money is not possible for everyone, so I ask that you consider pledging your time and talent as well. That's what all those little pink hearts are for. They're on that wall by the kitchen. Those are all pledges that people filled out yesterday for their gifts of time and talent. And remember that joining in to this communal worship service, that is service as well. Coming here and reaching out to people in friendship and kindness, that is an important service to the community as well. Also, if you're willing to make some phone calls to church members who have not pledged yet, we're going to need probably 20 or 30 people for that task. So please see Judy Shaw. Is Judy here today? Judy, Molly May, Janelle, other members of the GenNet, they're around here. Yeah, thank you. So all month long, we've been listening to members talk about what this congregation means to them and why they give a portion of their income to help support this church, to support the empowerment of love, to support the transformation of self and service to our world. So this morning I was looking for Medley Wade. Is Medley here today? I was afraid that was going to happen. But Molly May said that she would just impromptu give her own testimony this morning. So thank you so much, Molly Mae.
So I thought, why not, right? And I thought I'd tell you how I got here to the church. I come from a Catholic background. My family of origin is Catholic, and when I was a little girl, my second mom, joined our family, and she's Jewish. But my mama, starting when I was pretty small, decided to raise us Sufi. And I don't know if everyone knows what that's like, but it's a lot of fun if you're a little kid. It's a lot of dancing and singing. And I remember eating, lots of eating. And I loved being a Sufi. But when I was in the 5th grade, I decided that I wanted to be a priest or a nun or something. And were the only things that I had words for from my family of origin. And so since it was not today times, it was pre-times, I was allowed to take the bus to any church I wanted on Sunday or any synagogue, and I went to temple, and I went to Christian churches, and I spent from 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, I would go to different churches trying to find some place where I liked it. And my mom was totally okay with that as long as I could get myself there and home, which I could, because I also took the bus to gymnastics. And it took me until the 8th grade, 1984, to find the Unitarian church, because I lived kind of downtown, and it was on 40th and Donald, and that was much trickier. And when I found the Unitarian church, I joined the youth group and spent all of 8th grade and the remainder of my high school years in youth group, going to con, bridging, and I found my home. I have been here except for a decade where I stepped away and took my son to a different place where his grandma was in charge of religious education, because how cool is that? That's my oldest, who, by the way, is 30 next month. And my youngest is 10 in August. So ask me how I'm doing as often as you can. I love being here. I pledge a lot of my time, more than my money, but I also do pledge my money. I believe in us. I believe in our community, and I really deeply believe in humankind.
Well, we're going to spread more love today through our meditation as well. But before we begin, just want to make sure folks know that when you come in the sanctuary and at any point during this service, you can write your joys and sorrows over here in our book. You can put a stone in the water. You can light a candle. And then those that are on Zoom can write prayers of joy and sorrow into the Zoom chat, which will be open until the sermon begins. And during the week on our website, we have the pastoral care portal, and you can go on there and you can find the lay pastoral associates. You can find the minister contacts as well. And today we're going to light a candle of life. Thank you, Rev Jen. For Pat Kriskow, who is Leslie Sabini's mother, who died on February 6th. May we light this candle of life for Pat Kriskow today. And hold Leslie and Augie in our hearts and their family. And so today we're going to spread some more love by entering into a time of metta prayer, which many of you are familiar with. And this is an amazing practice that cultivates compassion and love, right, out into the world and in ourselves. So let us gather today and get comfortable in your body, however that feels, and we will practice this metta prayer that will expand the scope of your loving kindness. And you can say these, repeat these to yourself, and we'll do may I, may you, and may all beings, and we'll go through that together. So you can say that out loud, say it inward, however you may choose. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May you be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May all beings be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be happy. May you be happy. May all be happy. May my body support the practice of loving awareness. May your body support the practice of loving awareness. May everyone's body support the practice of loving awareness. May I be free from ill will, affliction, and anxiety. May you be free from ill will, affliction, and anxiety. May all be free from ill will, affliction, and anxiety. May I love myself as I am. May you love yourself as you are. May everyone love themselves as they are. May I be happy and free from suffering. May you be happy and free from suffering. May all be happy and free from suffering. May I find peace in an uncertain world. May you find peace in an uncertain world. May all find peace in an uncertain world. May I find ease on the middle path between attachment and apathy. May you find ease on the middle path between attachment and apathy. May all find ease on the middle path between attachment and apathy. And now breathe deep and let out that loving kindness into the world that so needs your compassion. Amen, and may it be so. And let us now sing our centering song, A Love Like This.
Okay.
I have two readings for you today. The first is an excerpt from a poem by Elena Bell entitled Your Village. Once in a village that is burning, because a village is always burning somewhere, and if you do not look because it is not your village, it is still your village. In that village is a hollow child. You drown when you look at his black, black eyes. And if you do not cry because he is not your child, he is still your child. Our second reading is a parable found in Elie Wiesel's book, The Gates of the Forest. When the great rabbi and founder of Hasidic Judaism, Baal Shem Tov, saw misfortune threatening the Jews, it was his custom to go into a certain part of the forest to meditate. There he would light a fire, say a special prayer, and the miracle would be accomplished and the misfortune averted. Later, when his disciple, the celebrated Maggid of Mezrich, had occasion for the same reason to intercede with heaven, he would go to the same place in the forest and say, "Master of the universe, listen. I do not know how to light the fire, but I am still able to say the prayer." And again, the miracle would be accomplished. Still later, Rabbi Moish Leib of Sasov, in order to save his people once more, would go into the forest and say, "I do not know how to light the fire. I do not know the prayer, but I know the place, and this must be sufficient." It was sufficient, and the miracle was accomplished. Then it fell to Rabbi Israel of Ryzen to overcome misfortune. Sitting in his armchair, his head in his hands, he spoke to God. "I am unable to light the fire, and I do not know the prayer. I cannot even find the place in the forest. All I can do is tell the story, and this must be sufficient." And it was sufficient.
And I do not know the place in the forest. I am unable to light the fire. All I can do is to tell the story of the threats to Jewish, Black, trans, Asian, immigrant lives. In particular, today, I want to focus on the Jewish story, not because one group's suffering is greater than any other, for the seeds of anti-Semitism sprout from the same ground as racism and xenophobia, homophobia and transphobia. I'm focusing today on the Jewish story because our collective ignorance about the origins of anti-Semitism leads well-meaning people, even Unitarian Universalist people, to comfortably use anti-Jewish language with little self-reflection about the harm that it causes. This is a current story happening right here in our town today, and it is an age-old story of bigotry and prejudice and hatred of the other. For the past several weeks, anti-Jewish and some anti-Black lives flyers have been found in neighborhoods all over Eugene and Springfield. As you probably know, this is nothing new in our neighborhoods. Every few years, it seems like, certain white people empowered by hate threaten, harass, and frighten their neighbors. The more I learn about my new hometown here, the more I realize that the roots of white supremacy run deep in these wooded hills, flow through our rivers, and swirl in the air that we breathe. From the seizure of the lands from the Kalapuya people to the establishment of the state of Oregon as the only state admitted to the U.S. with a Black exclusion clause in its constitution, a stubborn whites-only sentiment is part of our DNA. In the 1920s, Oregon had the highest Ku Klux Klan membership per capita in the United States. And Eugene was home to one of its largest, strongest groups. They promoted 100% Americanism and patriotism, themes we hear echoed by Proud Boys and white nationalists today. They targeted not only African Americans, but also Catholics and immigrants and Jews. Here, on this land, institutions and individuals, often through silence, helped to maintain a fertile ground where white supremacists felt comfortable and unchallenged. Since the 2016 presidential election, the number of anti-Semitic hate crimes has increased as white supremacists felt a new era of permission to express themselves with violent acts of intimidation. But hatred against the Jewish people is as old as their history. 1,000 years before the Common Era, the Israelites refused to worship the idols declared sacred by the local rulers. They were persecuted for worshiping their own God. And then the rise of the established Christian church opened the doors to a more cruel and institutionalized prejudice against the Jewish people. In the years 300, 400, 500, Jews were forbidden to intermarry with Christians. They were prevented from holding some government positions. They couldn't testify against Christians. And then at the beginning of the second millennium, the Holy Crusades, they were launched to liberate the Christian Holy Lands from the Muslims. But there was so much religious fervor in that campaign that a lot of Jewish communities also were harassed and looted and massacred. During the bubonic plague, nearly a third of the entire population of Europe was decimated. In the swirl of that fear and superstition and ignorance, people blamed the Jews for causing and spreading disease. We would hear this same scapegoating during the COVID pandemic. Around the year 1400, Europe was coming back to life after the plague, and the economy was expanding with increased trade. Jewish people were gaining prominence in banking and commerce, but that was seen as a problem by the dominant rulers, and the result of that was mass expulsion of Jews from certain European countries. Now, some were allowed to stay if they agreed to convert to Christianity. Others were stripped of their civil and legal rights. Others were forced to wear symbols on their clothing or pointed hats so that they could be easily recognized. In the Middle Ages, Martin Luther launched the Protestant movement by nailing his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg church. This particular church has been around since 1290. And it's still standing, and what is also still standing is a sandstone carving on the exterior showing two Jewish people suckling a pig, and a caricature of a rabbi holding that pig's tail. Last summer, only last summer, Germany's highest court struck down a case brought by a citizen who said that the carving was not only offensive, but dangerous in a time of rising anti-Semitism. The court struck that down. Unitarian Universalists can trace our religious roots back to Luther and back to the Protestant Reformation, so we should all be aware that Luther not only protested against Catholics, but also the Jewish people. He wrote a pamphlet called "The Jews and Their Lies." Apparently, he thought that the Jewish sympathizers of his movement would not only speak out against the Roman Church, but also convert to Christianity. And when they didn't, Luther wrote such ugly things about them, urging the actual slaying of Jews. Hundreds of years later, in 1935, the Nazis would reprint this pamphlet, helping to fuel the idea that being Jewish was not only a religious identity, but an actual separate race of people that would contaminate the purity of the so-called Aryan race. Their solution? Shoah. the Holocaust, the Nazi attempt to eliminate the Jewish people from the face of the earth. After the world witnessed the atrocities and the horrors of the concentration camps, a collective shame temporarily quieted anti-Jewish sentiment. Still, it would take the Catholic Church another 20 years, well into the 1980s, to finally stop saying that the Jews killed Jesus. Today, as fewer and fewer people actually read the Bible for themselves, relying instead on popular culture, movies, Twitter, TikTok for information, the Pew Research Center has found that an increasing number of people really do believe that the Jews killed Jesus, even though the most logical and rational reading of the original text shows that the Roman Empire was responsible for his execution after charging him with treason. Just last month, an NPR story reported that the number of Americans who believe the truth of certain Jewish tropes, Jewish kind of figures of speech, has dramatically increased over the last 3 years. More people now say they agree with statements like, Jews don't share my values, or Jews have too much power in the business world. Some of those recent flyers that we found around town suggest that Jewish lawmakers will take away your guns and that Jewish-run companies dominate all of the world's media. These ideas, these thoughts, turn into feelings, and sometimes those feelings turn into violent action. I learned that in 2002, 5 residents of our town drove to the synagogue, Temple Beth Israel, and threw rocks etched with swastikas through their stained glass windows while nearly 100 people, 100 congregants were worshiping. That was not the first incident targeting our local Jewish neighbors, and it would not be the last. It is so easy for us to focus all of our attention on the evildoers, spreading hate, pushing them away, saying, I am not that. I have nothing to do with that or those people. We could spend all of our time demonizing the Proud Boys and the neo-Nazis. We could go on for hours railing against Trump and Christian nationalists. Let's face it, they're all easy targets. But you know, that kind of talk is another form of othering that just reinforces divisions that are already too wide. Unitarian Universalists believe that all lives are interconnected and interrelated. Dr. King reminds us that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. The harder spiritual work, my friends, is always self-examination, self-awareness. Do you remember the first time you encountered anti-Jewish sentiments? Given that white supremacy is so deeply entrenched in this community, its air and water and very DNA, how has that shaped you and your thoughts? When you consider joining the action later this afternoon, what empowers you? What stops you? This afternoon, I invite all who are able to come back here at 1:30 with your Side of Love t-shirts. I see you wearing them right now. We're going to carpool to the Santa Clara neighborhood for an action of love and unity. We are joining Surge, showing up for racial justice, and the Social Justice Committee of the Santa Clara and River Road community organizations. We're going to distribute flyers and talk with our neighbors about anti-Semitism and how we collectively, together, can overcome white supremacy in our town. Unitarian Universalists are known as the love people. All over the country, we show up to declare that the power of love is greater than the power of ignorance and prejudice, racism and discrimination. Our community partners count on us to show up, and we will not let them down. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be. Now extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now I'll echo the words of Bell Hooks to send you forth. The moment we choose love, we begin to move toward freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. Go now, my friends, choose love. Amen.